Jai Gurudev, and thank you so much for the clarity you have provided so far. There are still a couple of points from Gurudev's knowledge sheet that we haven't touched upon in depth. One is the metaphor he uses about water and mud. Water is never scared of the mud. So if something is muddy, you are water and you can wash it off. How should we understand this metaphor in the context of handling politics? And before we wrap up, there are still these things which we need to elaborate upon. Absolutely, there is a very important aspect of Gurudev's teachings. What he is explaining here is the psychological principles. When we resist something, we give it more energy and attention. It is like trying to push something away. Ironically, the more you push, the more it stays in your mind. In this case, when we resist politics, when we constantly think, I don't want to deal with politics, our mind gets more entangled in it. We start seeing politics everywhere, even when it may not exist. And this can lead to paranoia, as Gurudev mentions, is highlighting that resistance often magnifies the very thing we are trying to avoid. This is why he advises us not to resist politics. Instead, we should acknowledge its existence without letting it dominate our mind. By not resisting, we reduce its impact on us. This doesn't mean we accept unethical behavior, but we don't allow politics to consume our thoughts and our energy. Gurudev's advice is very practical. If we don't give politics too much attention, it will eventually dissipate on its own. As he says, what appears to be politics will find its own way out. This means that when we maintain our inner calm and focus, the political drama around us will naturally resolve or becomes less significant. That's such a valuable perspective. Resisting something often makes it more powerful. Gurudev also talks about the expectations we place on others. He says, our trouble is that we expect everyone to be Mr. Perfect or Miss Perfect. We expect everyone's behavior and dealings to be perfect. How does this contribute to our difficulties with politics? This is a fundamental point. Gurudev is addressing the unrealistic expectations we often place on others. We expect people to behave in an ideal manner, to always be ethical, fair, and perfect in their interactions. But the reality is, people are human. They have their own flaws, biases, and personal interests. When we expect perfection from them, we set ourselves up for disappointment. In the context of politics, these expectations can be even more problematic. When someone behaves in a way that doesn't align with our idea of perfection, we immediately label it as politics or manipulation. But as Gurudev points out, people's actions are nothing but politics. He is showing us that much of what we call politics is simply human nature, people acting out of self interest, emotions, or social dynamics. This doesn't mean we should accept unethical behavior, but we need to adjust our expectations. When we stop expecting everyone to be perfect, we become less reactive to the imperfections and political games around us. We start to accept people as they are, which makes it easier to navigate the political landscape without getting upset or frustrated. That's a really important shift in mindset. Instead of expecting perfection, we can accept people's imperfections and not get caught up in it. Gurudev also mentions that it is better to keep oneself on a higher pedestal, smiling, laughing, accommodating, and accepting that there is politics. How does maintaining this higher perspective help us in dealing with politics? Yes, this is crucial. Gurudev is encouraging us to rise above the pettiness of politics by maintaining a higher, more elevated perspective. When we keep ourselves on that higher pedestal, we are not just physically above the situation, but mentally and emotionally too. This higher perspective allows us to maintain our calm, smile through the ups and downs, and laugh at the absurdities of political games. By keeping ourselves on the higher plane, we become more accommodating of others. We understand that people are acting out of their own limitations, and we don't let it affect our inner peace. This doesn't mean we become passive or indifferent. Instead, we respond to situations with clarity and confidence without getting entangled in the emotional drama of politics. As Gurudev says, let politics be there, so what? This attitude helps us stay unaffected. When we are not reactive, we can navigate politics with grace rather than getting dragged into it. Maintaining this higher perspective also ensures that we don't lose sight of our purpose and values, which often get compromised when we get too involved in politics. That's a wonderful approach to stay elevated about and above the political dynamics and maintain our peace. Finally, there's a powerful example Gurudev gives about building homes in different environments. If someone has built a home on the seashore and is scared of the waves, what can I tell them? If someone has built a home in the middle of the marketplace and is complaining about the noise, what can I tell them? How does this analogy relate to our experience of politics? This analogy is a brilliant way of illustrating the inevitability of politics in any social setting. Gurudev is essentially saying that just as you would not build a house by the sea and expect no waves, or build one in a market and expect no noise. You cannot live in society and expect there to be no politics. It's part of the natural environment, just like the waves in the ocean or noise in a busy marketplace. The key here is acceptance. Just as someone living by the sea must accept the waves and someone living in the market must accept the noise, we must accept that politics will always be present wherever there are people. This acceptance allows us to stop resisting it and learn to live with it peacefully. By using this analogy, Gurudev is teaching that complaining about politics is futile. It's like complaining about the natural conditions of our environment. Instead, we should learn to navigate politics. Just as a person living by the sea learns to deal with the waves, or a person in the market learns to tune out the noise. When we accept the existence of politics without being disturbed by it, we gain the strength and wisdom to move through it with ease. That's such a profound lesson, accepting the environment we live in, including the politics, without letting it disturb us. Thank you so much for walking us through these important points from Gurudev's wisdom. This has been an enlightening discussion full of practical and spiritual insights. It's been a pleasure to share Gurudev's teachings. I hope these insights will help everyone deal with politics in their lives, not as something to be feared or resisted, but as something we can rise above with grace and strength. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this wisdom in depth. Jai Gurudev.